Are you going to start this out, city manager, or lead it to Kyle? You're on the hot seat.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So I handed out really two documents. The first time I got it wrong and didn't get it two-sided. The first, I have last year's 5-year CIP that was approved by council in front of you so that you can see the changes between last year's and this year's. The color copy with the notations that's two-sided is the proposed draft 5-year CIP that is the topic of tonight's work session. Just to recap real quickly, FY24 operating budget has been passed. Typically, the city of Soldotna will adopt a capital budget very soon into the new fiscal year with the objective of getting as much construction season as we can in the first part of the fiscal year. This year, we don't have a lot of construction activities planned. So it's kind of conducive to our shift in schedule here. You know, this is the last meeting in June. Our plan is to introduce the appropriating ordinance in the first meeting in July for the capital budget, which again is the first year, FY24 of the 5-year CIP. And then, I'm sorry, we'll have as well as the resolution for the 5-year CIP. So I'll back up just a touch. In the past, we've had two separate documents, a 5-year CIP, which is just a planning tool. It's a long-range planning document, identifies city resources and funding going out 5 years. It identifies, you know, not funding allocations, but priorities and their potential costs to implement those priorities. So it's the 5-year CIP is a planning document. The capital budget, however, appropriates real dollars to accomplish those projects. In the last several years, we have combined those where the 5-year CIP, the first year of the 5-year CIP is our anticipated capital budget. So when we adopt this 5-year CIP, the expectation is the administration will bring back a capital budget that is consistent with what you see in the upcoming fiscal year, which would be FY24. A capital project is a major non-recurring budget item, typically in excess of, you name it. Usually it's a pretty big figure, 50,000, 100,000. In our case, we have fairly consistently included smaller projects for a few different reasons. One that you might see right away is the storefront improvement. It's conducive to have in the capital allocation because the capital accounts don't expire in the fiscal year. And that is an ongoing grant program to our community. And so unused funds roll over, whereas in a operating budget, obviously they don't at the fiscal year. I'm kind of bouncing around with the housekeeping of what is a capital budget, where we're at in the cycle. I'll kind of pause there, take any questions as far as programs and procedures at the city of Soldotna.
Any questions from anyone?
On the projects that are listed here, I know we've got HDR on contract looking for grants. So they're working with this new draft. There's some particular projects I look at it and I go, there should be some funding out there somewhere for some of these.
Yes, I left some of my notations on this draft regarding, you know, grants that we're seeking, just to demonstrate that you know, projects sometimes are included as a community priority, but require outside funding. Fireweed is a good example, right? We would love to extend Fireweed. It would create a new collector street, improve our traffic flow, would unlock several residential lots for growth in our city. But the cost is enormous for a new street of that magnitude, including the underground utilities and the non-motorized aspects of the street template. So, you know, we we recognize that as a community need and priority, and we included on this document to assist us with just that, seeking grants and grant opportunities. HDR is under contract to assist us with grants. We have them on a use as needed basis right now. So we're not incurring, hourly charges until we release them on a particular project. And we're able to do that at any time. So they do monitor the notice of funding opportunities that come out and kind of give us an update on those, as well as city staff here are always kind of watching the grants.gov and other outlets for that. So there are quite a few projects that are we either have grants applications submitted and we're waiting on. We have some that we have grant applications that are pending, that are due in the near future in the next several months or longer. And we've got some that are on the cusp of being funded, really, waiting on final scoring, like the Homestead Lane. It's advanced to the project evaluation board with the state, and we're hopeful that when that gets evaluated, that it's high enough to be funded. And then there are some, and I wanted to put these on here to demonstrate the same issue. If you flip to the utility fund, we've got 3 projects on the backside that have secured grant funding. And it's a good demonstration of this 5-year CIP as a living document where we identify these priorities and the needs and the cost to implement them. And we continue to seek out and find grant funding to build those and not utilize entire city or utility funds. These 3 were congressionally designated spending, otherwise known as earmarks. So we were successful in applying for the CDS grant funds, and Senator Murkowski's team was able to get them funded in the last omnibus bill. So huge success there, and we look forward to getting those projects underway. One of which is a high priority project that we're currently working on, which is the biosolids project. So, but I'm skipping to the fun stuff.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Replace the playground equipment at Soldotna Creek Park. When that was originally done, there was a group that had come together to get that park in place and get the playground equipment. Is that group still around? And is this something we are going to be reaching out and saying, this is something the city wants to do? Are you willing? Do you want to participate, and in what form?
A little bit of both. I think that I'm not sure to what degree that group still exists. I know there was a strong volunteer, was right when I came to the city, strong volunteer group that facilitated that project. And then there was a strong volunteer group that implemented that project, right? On the ground, boots on the ground, which was a wonderful thing. And it got us that playground to what it is today. The flip side to that is some of that construction isn't as long lasting as the more expensive, made to order type stuff. And that's why we're seeing end of life kind of situations for some of that playground equipment. Now where are we at, Joel? 12 years in or so? No, longer than that, probably 14 years in. So probably a bit of both, though. I think that the community really rallied around that, and I think there's opportunity for some of that as well. But this project envisions the purchase and installation of purposely manufactured playground equipment that's certified, by the various organizations.
But I know previously they also raised money to help put the park in place and do some of the things. So I think being a good neighbor, it would be worthwhile for us to reach out to them and let them know that this is something that we want to do. And if there's some way they want to participate or help potentially offset our costs, so that they know it is on our radar screen. I just think it's a good thing because they were the ones that initially pushed it.
Absolutely. We will do that. I think there is opportunity for both financial contribution and in-kind contribution. And there's probably folks out there on both sides.
I just want to make a quick comment, especially when it comes to the project like playgrounds. People do tend to love to take ownership in a positive way of the project too, when they're involved in changes happening, ideas, maybe a session where we talk about what changes are happening. And I think that may springboard into what she's talking about. If we had like hey, we're going to update things like at the park, this is going to happen, gets more community involvement, maybe some information about what people want / need going into the park, or problems that they have, may be a springboard to getting some of that community involvement as well.
Mr. Carey.
Just add to that in terms of just the age, in terms of the group that did that, the young people that were involved in doing that are past that now. And so you've got an opportunity, again, as being mentioned on all sides of me, to bring in a totally new people who now have younger children who could also use that. And so again, I think the city has a very good history of working with the community to put this on, and now kind of doing, I'll say, phase 2 would be a really nice thing. And we'd be talking about, I think, possibly a significantly new group of people.
Ms. Hutchings.
The only comment that I would like to make is I go past that park a lot where the kids play, and I hope that we don't put up a solid fence so that you cannot see in there, because there are a lot of times we have walked by and there are shady people and there are little kids in there playing. And I think it needs more visibility. So when we go around and decide what kind of park we're going to have, it might need a fence, but it should be something that you can see through.
I'm going to flip over to the other side.
I'll make one quick comment on all those. Those are great comments. And I do think that we've got a pretty active Parks Board that will certainly have a lot of involvement in it. And Joel, Todd, our Parks Directors here, if there's specific questions on how that might play out, but I do know that they're a very engaged board and would be heavily involved in the design and rollout of what eventually gets put up there.
Well, speaking of parks, I've suggested it a couple of times to various people that in some of our parks, why don't we put in some kind of exercise equipment, especially for senior citizens who can use it, or people who can't afford to go to the different gymnasiums and workout places. If you look through ARP, they have a lot of information about that kind of equipment. But I want to flip over to the other side of the utility fund for a second. The very first thing, the effluent outfall repairs. Is that the issue that's came up here just the last couple of weeks?
That's correct.
And we've come to determine what's cost, and this estimate is a good one.
No, sir. Not, I wouldn't, this is an adequate estimate at this time. So we understand what the problem is, and it's our discharge, wastewater treatment plant discharge effluent line. It's got some blockages and it's still functioning, but to a degraded degree. So it's got some impacts, so we're going to need to take care of it. We have reached out to a consultant to assist with investigation, permitting, design of the repair. And then this is what you're seeing here is a estimate for accomplishing that. So we don't know for sure the extent of the repair until we can actually get some, probably some camera stuff down and get some more intel on it. So, but I talked to the consultant today specifically on this and tried to bookend what kind of range we would be expecting. And right now, this is the top end of the range.
And this is something that we would probably maybe have to have done before cold weather sets in.
Yes, so the timing is ideal for implementation of the construction phase at low water, when in the fall, or right before freeze up. We wouldn't want to wait till after it's frozen. So
this is going to be a priority project.
correct.
Okay.
I know that obviously we're not diagnosing what's going on with it, but I actually was wondering if there's been any issues with our sewer system and flushable wipes and menstrual products and anything where we could do sort of a campaign or need to do a campaign to let people know what should and shouldn't be flushed to maybe help our maintenance?
Always, it's always good to have a little bit of outreach every now and then on that, because there is some misunderstanding what is okay to flush and what isn't okay to flush. We actually have a page on our website that says what not to flush. We are actually currently this week and last week and the week before have been working on our preventative maintenance in the sewer collection system. So the crews have been out, and Mike's out of town, otherwise he'd be here tonight to talk to you a bit about this, but they've been out cleaning the lift stations. We have 16 sanitary sewer lift stations, most of them with 2 pumps. Got to pull the pumps. There's mop rags and all the thing. You know, there's a lot of challenges with those, and they have to work. So, you know, my phone, their phone, we can look up what the level is in all of those. So they're doing preventive maintenance on those, and then the collection system, they're out rotting. So they put a high pressure jet and they clean those out, and it is expensive and time consuming. So it's probably a good time to kind of revamp and relook at maybe using our Doggone News media outlet and some other avenues to remind folks.
I know with the Period Network, I'm surprised I'll come across people who are in their 30s that had no idea that they couldn't flush tampons. And I know that that would be a huge thing. I talked to somebody who ran in a different city. They said one of their major issues is flushable wipes, which are not flushable, and that they spend millions just trying to deal with that issue. So if we could get people on board with understanding what can and can't, we might save ourselves a few $100,000 in the long run.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I would say nothing has changed recently, but as Mr. Carey pointed out, people are always growing older and new generation, and so some outreach is probably a good thing. Fats, oils, and grease is the other major contributor, fog, and that's food service establishments, FSEs. So we have a stronger maintenance effort around those areas. But they pay a higher service fee for their sewer, recognizing that as well. So.
That's kind of a notification we could put on the monthly utility bills or a flyer in with that. Anything else? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you. Going back to the general fund CIP, FY27 gravel to black program. Those 9 miles of gravel roads, are those all within the city proper here? I mean, we have some unpaved out by forestry. Are you aware?
Those are all within the city of Soldotna, correct? Yes.
So I could cross my fingers? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, within that program, there would be a prioritized list, and it would take into account a lot of different factors, you know, the amount of use, the level of maintenance required for that type of use, you know, the zoning district and et cetera. So, but we do universally recognize that gravel roads are more expensive to maintain and less desirable for our community. So, if we can systematically eliminate those, we would want to, but that takes time and money, which is why we've kind of identified that as a need. It also, again, assists us if some funding were to come available in that genre, where we can say, you know what, our community has this need and it's been formally adopted by our, you know, governing body.
I think you probably need to have that in fiscal year 28, because you got 2 lines for fiscal 27.
Oh, this was hot off the press, wasn't it? Thank you for that.
Mr.
I
Carroll.
was just wondering, in terms of Beluga, where's that on your list of things?
Soldotna Ave and Beluga has been on and off the list for some time. There are some commercial properties and residential in those areas. Parts of Beluga need some underground work, some costly water and sewer extensions, I believe. So currently, you know, it isn't on a identified list, but it is amongst those of the unpaved roads in the city. Yeah.
Is there much communication in terms of with the people that live on the road? In that, what I've heard is that a number of the people on that road don't want anything done, does that affect the decision making by the city?
It certainly could. You know, the amount of use a road gets, you know, in the summer, we don't have to put, you know, dust control and palliative and stuff on gravel roads and grade them, especially on a rainy year. That's when it takes a lot of maintenance. The potholes develop in washboards and stuff. You know, asphalt surface doesn't require that. So we take that into consideration, sure. If I would assume that would mean that it is holding up and in good shape if they're not requesting upgrades to it. So that would probably be reflective in when it gets done. But
Carry on.
okay, so I can go through these projects kind of one by one. And maybe you could jump in and just ask questions. I'll try to be kind of quick. But the first thing I should note is that you know, per our conversation at the last work session, you know, we have a very high priority that was on our our CIP plan last year. If you'll look at last year's FY24 second line down, $3 million for the Soldotna Fieldhouse. If you'll recall in our last work session, the administration has proposed increasing that to 3.5 million and appropriating those funds to accomplish the fieldhouse construction. You won't see that on this because we have an ordinance for introduction at tonight's meeting for that appropriation. So we're planning on taking care of that, you know, not under the capital budget as a standalone ordinance appropriating money for that project. And part of the funding strategy to accomplish that project was to skinny up our capital budget, our annual capital budget. And as I explained at the last work session, we feel that we're able to do that because for a number of different reasons. The city has done a good job of keeping up with our infrastructure needs and our capital budgeting over the last many years. You know, we don't have deferred maintenance items that have been pushed off year to year that get into a critical need. We're able to take care of those ahead of time, right? We don't have, you know, roofs that are leaking onto existing equipment and furnishings that are making further damage. We don't have certain streets that are perennial problems. We have been able to address those needs and then a lot of wants too, and quality of life type aspects, which is great. And that's what that field house is going to do as well. So the funding strategy is at least in this first year and potentially future years, skinny up this capital budget. And that's what you see before you. You see 105,000 targeting FY 2024. The first one is the storefront improvement funding. Again, an annual appropriation that supports that grant program that's been very successful and has resulted in a lot of improvements to our downtown core and commercial areas. The second one is a new project, body worn camera replacements. I think that's kind of an important last note. We have been utilizing body worn cameras for many years now. And I think we were one of the leaders in the state to implement those. As a result, those are aging and no longer supported in regards to the manufacturer and some of the integration components to it. So the chief has applied for a grant and there's some future grants that he's eyeballing if that current grant doesn't come through. However, it's important enough and the existing systems are failing at a rate that it's important for us to go ahead and appropriate funds and move towards the purchase of that. So in the interim between the final ordinance for the capital budget in a month and change, if we're successful in getting that grant, we'll drop this off and we'll have to spend general fund dollars on it. But if we do not get that grant, we're gonna want to commit some funding and get those body worn cameras replaced.
Are those grants for the full amount
Yes,
or more?
the full amount is my understanding. I'll confirm that though. The next one is also a new project. And I'll real quickly note that on the 5-year CIP in the first few years, the projects are much more refined and specific and more accurate. As we get kind of further down in those later years, they're not as refined. Refrigeration evaluation recommendation. The current refrigerant that we use at the ice rink is no longer manufactured. It's been outlawed for probably, a few years now. We did purchase a bulk amount of it last year, or the year before, so that we would continue to have some on hand and for minor leaks and evaporation and things of that nature. But it's time to start thinking about replacement. And to do that, we need to hire a industry expert in this field to analyze what we have and what our options are to move forward with replacing the compressor and refrigeration.
If that had to be replaced, any rough estimate as to what that would cost?
I've got a memo from Andrew here somewhere, but I won't read it aloud. To be determined is really the answer, because it's and why we want to hire a consultant to give us those options. I'm reluctant to pick a number out of the hat. I think it is a good, better, best scenario. As far as what we have to put back in there.
Would it require, and maybe you don't know this, would it require tearing out the rink floor to replace piping or anything like that? Or is it just the,
I don't believe so.
I got one head shaking, but yes, over here.
Uh-oh. He wants a new rink.
Yeah, there's a few different options that people are doing. So we're using Freon. They're making a different type of product that can stay in that system. So that would be an easy fix. It might not be the best option long-term. And then it could be a full remodel. If we went to a completely different product, it would probably require ripping up the entire flooring and putting piping.
So it's going to be a good, better, best scenario.
Anchorage just replaced 4 of their past couple of years, so we do have some fairly current numbers of what that would cost.
I'm sure it's going to be a lot. Okay, thank you.
We did. I'm looking up my numbers real quick. We purchased, I actually don't have that number here, but we did purchase a bulk supply of it to ensure that we had enough to get through.
Yeah, we did that a number of years ago. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yep. Yeah, we did a kind of an alternative procurement where we said, bid the pounds of R22 refrigerant that you can ship FOB Soldana for $50,000 is what we did. And then the most poundage is who was awarded the bid. I don't remember how many it was. And then the final one for FY24, which is proposed to be the capital budget for this year, is $10,000 in supplemental funding for the Riverfront redevelopment project. That project has been a very successful endeavor thus far. The consultant team has done a really strong job. The public outreach has been robust. I think the deliverables are due in November. So this would supplement the funding and enable us to ensure we can complete a MAI appraisal on the Catalyst site, as well as continue having those public outreach meetings. Small dollar amount, but an efficient and effective project. Just moving through into FY 2025, Karen Street Park upgrades. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 projects that are existing. I should note that we made minimal changes to this capital budget, as you note when you compare last year's to this year. Largely most projects stayed in their annual allocation year, which enabled us to have this skinny capital budget in FY 24. So these projects kind of stayed in their band right here. And most of them are pretty self-explanatory. And we talked a bit about the Salada Creek Park upgrades, streets preventative maintenance project, This would update our streets plan and do street rehabilitation. It's well known that rehabilitation efforts will vastly extend the life of your asphalt pavement before full reconstruction is required, and the cost difference between the two is enormous. So seal coating and crack sealing will buy significant years, and the cost of reconstruction is enormous, as you guys know. And then we've got 3 new projects here: police building exterior painting. This was a project brought by Scott in the maintenance department. And sure enough, if you take a hard look at our police building, the stucco-like exterior, which is unique to our area, is got a lot of staining and is in need of some pressure washing and cleaning. So that building's been kind of tucked away and needs some love. Funny River Road shop roof repair. This is a new project, big project. You'll see my note there. We got energy grant pending. We're anticipating submitting a grant for energy improvements for this project. We hired a consultant to architectural and structural consultant to analyze the shop and used a thermal infrared camera and have really good data on the current failing portions of the roof and the portions that are incredibly energy inefficient. So this is the shop roof out Funny River Road, right past the airport on the left. Solotna Creek Park stage improvements. This is a new project. This was brought by the Parks and Rec Department. This is some generalized stage improvements, including a rain cover, some speakers, lighting controller, and light poles. Some of these items may come off. We're able to accomplish them this year. This year's winding down. But the major improvement, the most obvious, is the rain cover element. So about half the stage is covered. Is that about right? Or 3/4 of it is covered, and with a high brow. So with poor weather, folks on the stage get wet, and it's not conducive to poor weather performances. So small investment. We're hoping to identify a solution to cover just that front portion of the stage.
Any chance of contacting the named company that's on that stage for some assistance?
We'll put that in the notes. That's correct. And then the final one is outdoor sand storage facility. That's our winter traction sand is just in one giant pile, and we do what some agencies do that don't have a covering, which is buy a tarp every couple of years and tie a bunch of tires together and hope the wind doesn't turn it into a kite. Scotty was supportive of pushing that down and waiting on that. But it would be an asset for the utility department. I'm sorry, for the maintenance department for filling up their sanders with traction sand. I will also point out in these 2 notes, in this one, the streets preventative maintenance, the next one down, storm drain and street repair, FY23 reappropriate postponed here. I wanted to call that out because that was in last year's capital budget, and that's one of the projects that we proposed reappropriating for use towards the field house and postponing that project to another year. And this is the year we pushed it to. Going into the FY 2026 Riverfront redevelopment project to be determined. This is the implementation phase for the grand Riverfront redevelopment project, for which the deliverables should be in hand in November, identifying several options and alignments for the Riverfront redevelopment concept. John and company, we all continue to seek grant opportunities. In fact, this morning, the city manager and John and I spoke with I won't spoil it for Jeanette, but we spoke with some members of Murkowski's office that were down and just identified some of our ongoing projects and talked about that in detail. So.
Ms. Hutchings.
On FY 2026, that is when the state is going to start doing some road construction. Is that not correct? As would they come into town? past Mackey Lake, past Shark Katmai?
I believe currently that is or somewhat target. I don't have a lot of faith in it at this point. I have not heard, we were working collaboratively on that project and identified some concerns, and they were going to retool and reconvene, and I haven't heard
You
much
haven't heard
since.
anything back.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, because we're gonna have to think about what we're gonna do with Shark Katmai, because that road will go down lower than what Shark Katmai is now, I do believe.
That'll be something that we should pay attention to, that I should monitor, because it'll be, if they modify the highway alignment, they'll be responsible for tying in those adjacent roads and having it, a compliant landing grade before any big steep changes,
Yeah, and I
so-
noticed that we're having some rather large homes built at the end of that cul-de-sac on Shark Katmai, and some other lots being sold. I didn't know what that would do with the prospective water and sewer issue, and just thinking out
Yep.
loud.
Yep, there is, we are seeing growth down in Sarcathmite that we haven't seen in a long time. Getting down there. So Homestead Lane construction. This is one, you'll see my note, DOT and PF CTP grant. We submitted a grant for that project. It was successfully passed through to the project evaluation board. They were scheduled to evaluate that and several other projects in Juneau a month ago, and it got postponed. We don't have the new date for that yet, but it's encouraging that we've made it really to the last stage of evaluation. So it has some advantages to the state, mostly off-highway connectivity, and also reducing the turning movements of East Redoubt and the highway, and allowing access to that signalized Mullen Y intersection. So a big reason why it's advanced to where it's at, and hopefully we'll get funded and move forward. Conference room expansion and construction. This is the conference room expansion, the construction phase of it. It's been pushed down. Obviously, it's a priority and a want, but the field house is our main focus right now. Library improvements. This is something that's ongoing and developing right now. We're actually kind of fine tuning what kind of programming needs we have there. It's amazing that it's been 12 plus years since we've done the expansion, and the operations of that facility has changed significantly from employee standpoint, user standpoint, the type of use. So we're kind of in need of relooking at the programming of that facility, primarily about staff space, but also front counter space and location with a number of patrons and the type of activities that are happening there. So we're just now kind of taking a look at what our needs are, then we'll develop a scope, schedule, and budget from a broad perspective, and then it'll adjust on the CIP in different iterations.
Just
Sure.
don't forget the branch outlets. I know you're gonna have library outlets all over town, so just please, in your planning, don't forget those, because I
Right.
figure 4 or 5 at least in the next 5 years.
I like
Thank
it.
you.
I already did that once at the mall. Remember? I put one at the mall.
But,
Yeah.
right, more.
Got it. Like the Orlando airport, it's gonna look like a snowflake. Centennial K Beach master plan. This is an existing project. This is recognizing that we've got 35 plus acres of city property along the highway corridor there. We've got great partnerships with several entities, the equestrian folks, the Little League, the Historical Society Museum, as well as our park and our big projects with the rink and the field house. So probably some proper long-term analysis and planning is due, so that we don't step on our own toes as we continue to develop that area. Maintenance worm storage facility, this has been a long-term need / want. This would enable us to keep equipment indoors year round, particularly in the winter, so that, a guy doesn't bundle up, start the equipment, let it run for 2 hours and then get in it and get out and do some street work. So not that that's our common practice, but it is hard on equipment to be starting out in the cold. So long-term need, grant dependent at this point. The new comp plan, I think we actually added this last year, so it's existing this year. The previous comp plan was completed in 2011. So the time has flown, and we have done, I think, a really good job of accomplishing a lot of the identified needs and recommendations in that comp plan. So time for a bunch of new.
Is
New-
that our portion of the cost? Because I know the borough funds a portion of it.
This would be a city Soldotna specific comp plan, our own comp plan. Yeah,
Well,
so this
yes,
would be
I-
our
I
cost.
believe we originally had funding from the borough to help pay for that 2011 one. Would we have it?
Hmm. Yeah, this is what we expect the full outlay to be. So whether or not we're
portion.
successful. No, total cost. So if we're successful in getting additional funding, that would reduce this number. Yeah. This is a dream project of mine, and it's someday we need to do it. Reconstruct Marydale. That is, and it's much in need. We're gonna continue to seek grants for that. It is a major collector for our community. It's also probably one of the most, besides Binkley, one of the most regionally used street in the city, right? It is access to schools where kids come from all over our Central Peninsula, the seat of the borough government, the medical community, including the hospital, the post office, the school district. So Marydale is it's in need of rehabilitation, on the cusp of reconstruction. And what we'd like to do is obtain grants to reconstruct, to make it everything it needs to be from a vehicular standpoint, but also non-motorized. It is one of our most needed non-motorized improvements in the city. For example, we've got a 3-foot asphalt sidewalk on one side that is inconsistent, so.
We don't have very much of a right of way left there, do we?
We do have some to play with on one side, and then we have some utility conflicts on the other side. So it's not a shave and pave and simple fix. Yeah, I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
So we have adequate right of way in the sense that it's not smaller than normal, and some areas are slightly bigger. It's a fairly traditional right of way, but it's old, and so it's a little complicated right of way. It's not new street. You're correct in that. And that's going to add to the cost. City Hall improvements, this is something we added in the last couple of years. And it probably was started involving COVID but like the library, the City Hall operations have grown. We've got a lot of projects and activities going on. And so this was added to the list again in the latter years of the 5-year CIP to improve, operating efficiencies and the customer service aspect of the front counter, things of that nature. Again, seeking grant opportunities to help accomplish that project. And then a perennial project paving of Centennial Campground from the highway down to the boat launch. Wouldn't it be wonderful if that was paved? I know that Scotty and his crew they'd have to find something else to do, because that is a very common road for them to have to hit with a grader, again, particularly in a rainy season. It is nearly daily in July, I think. They're getting asked to come grade it. Joel can probably attest to the phone calls that he gets.
But there's a good possibility we might have to reroute that road anyway.
So that master plan, that K Beach master plan that's one huge element too, that we'd look at in that area is the approach for Centennial and its proximity to the signalized intersection. you know, is there an opportunity to route it, you know, at the top of the slope, or, you know, what those costs are and what are the impacts to the existing users, but certainly that would be one impact. I would think that the most of it would probably still be you know, useful. Fairly long road.
The signalized intersection, you're talking about the entrance exit of the sports complex. That's
No, that's
Or you're just
the
talking-
very last one down here. What
Okay.
I was talking about, and I think the mayor was alluding to, is the road going into Centennial Park is in a terrible location with the K Beach Sterling signal. Yeah. You know, so that certainly is, yes, boy, that we can just connect these capital projects. Yeah, so a frontage road, if you will, or something moving that approach away from the K Beach Sterling intersection and then implementing a signalized intersection at Arena Avenue, that certainly would be one grand fix. So. And I'll, just so I don't have to hit it later when we run out of time, that last one, priority is not yet assigned, highway grade separated crossings. That's that Arena Avenue signal that we're recognizing. And good news, I forgot to add a little comment box there. We did submit a grant, and that was one that HDR, our grant consultants, assisted with, a raise grant. We're still waiting on word of that. It's a very highly competitive, but we asked for, I think, 900,000 in some planning funds to better understand and get the traffic warrants that DOT would need in order to fund and implement a signal there. Lots of steps to get a signal on a highway these days, and money.
across from Salteshi Trails and figuring out how to.
Yeah, and then integration into we thought of, our grant applications got all kinds of stuff more than it probably should. Trail and pedestrian improvements, again, this is kind of always on there as we continue to seek, non-motorized infrastructure in our city. Gravel Black, we kind of talked about, we have, 9 miles of gravel roads. We'd love to not have any. But we'd also love to find grant opportunities to pay for that. Mechanic shop at Arbor Avenue, again, another existing project. When we built the when we built the admin building and storage bay and equipment bay at Arbor, we plumbed and planned for the eventual mechanics shop to be built there. So if a grant were to be available for that, we would build that. This conference room expansion design, I need to fix that. That is in the wrong place.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were gonna design it after you constructed it.
Yeah, well, with today's cost estimating, it's probably about this. South Fireweed, finally, I kind of spoke on that. We'd love to create that new collector and unlock those properties for development by the private sector. But again, we need to seek and obtain some grants. So I know that we're hoping to have a short break between the work session and the yeah, it will. I'll take a quick pause and then happy to talk about anything on the utility CIP as well. I will note that, again, this is a fluid document. We revisit it. We will revisit it again in the fall if and when we want to have a sub list of capital priorities. We call those our legislative priorities, where we identify specific priorities that we intend to request funding through the state and federal legislative process. So that's typically a separate capital list. I'll pause there and look for any questions.
If not, we'll go ahead and make a break now.
Okay, so we will readjust this and get it into a final form and plan on bringing it back before you at your next regularly scheduled meeting as a resolution. And then when the planning document is approved, we will also introduce an ordinance for appropriating that FY24 capital budget, which is a small number.
And I would suggest if anyone on the council has any questions or anything they want to add or delete to that, contact Kyle before.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We will take a quick break here and get ready for the next meeting. Hey Kyle, before you run off.
You guys didn't want to hang out up here. We're not gonna do it on purpose, though.
Sorry. You're doing important things.
There shouldn't be any of our manholes back there.
No, I'm pretty sure.
I'm doing what they pay me to do.
No, okay.
Huh? Yeah.
So how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
You know, you always have to remember they did have more Montana.
No, it's not so much for me. I don't mind the rain. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it just got a little crazy. I thought 24 years was long enough. I mean, yeah. Oh, you'll hear about it.
And I have the officer or officers of.
Sure, just for distribution to the council. Sure. Well, it's not up to me, but I'm sure it will be with the only person.
Mhm. Well, I'm not gonna make that one, but I'm on the Kenai Peninsula Foundation, and we have some discretionary funds. So, yeah, you know, because you got some. So I told Kyle or John to give me a write-up on some particular projects they have for the Historical Society, and I'll present them in an email meeting. So maybe we can get you something. And I will present at their next one, you know, I'll see if I can get forward. That's the whole thing, you know. Yeah, I'll get it all. So. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah. Like hires. You know, yeah.
Is the Rio stats turned down? Is the Rio stats turned down? I'm sorry? Yes. Yeah. I would like to call the June 28th, 2023 City Council regular meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Will clerk please call the roll?
Carrie,
Present?
Chilson,
Okay. He has an excused absence.
Hutchings.
Here.
Nelson,
Present.
I see your face. You're on mute.
I'm present.
Still can't hear you, but he's there. Parker,
Present.
Wackler,
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Mr. Carey,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I move the approval of our agenda and our consent agenda as presented to us.
may I have a second? Ms. Hutchings, thank you. Would the clerk please read, excuse me, are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
June 14th, 2023 council meeting minutes. Ordinance 2023-019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $16,790 in the general fund for an increase in scope to the audit services contract, sponsored by the city manager, hearing on July 12th. Ordinance 2023-020, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $3,500,000 in the general fund, $250,000 in the small capital project fund, and $3,750,000 in the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Capital Project Fund, reallocating $575,000 in the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Capital Project Fund, and authorizing the use of remaining already appropriated American Rescue Plan Act ARPA fund for construction of the Soldotna Fieldhouse, sponsored by the city manager, hearing on July 12th. Ordinance 2023-021, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $11,000 to $11,200 in the general fund to use of the Alaska Records Management System, ARMS, sponsored by the city manager. Public hearing on July 12th, 2023. That is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the council chambers wishing to speak on any item that the clerk just read? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and there is no hands raised there. Having no one wishing to speak, the approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is number 4, presentation with prior notice and oath of office, the swearing in of new police officer Brian Hahn. I will now give police officer Brian Hahn his oath of office. Do solemnly swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of law, and Alaska, chartered ordinances. I will faithfully, impartially perform, discharge my duties as police officer. Take this oath freely, without reservation, promise to act at all times in accordance with laws and regulations. Furthermore, recognize the fact my office is a symbol of public faith, with honor and respect, with trust, fulfilling my fundamental law enforcement. Welcome aboard.
And everybody leaves. I'll see you at Michael's.
remembered to have him raise his hand this time. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, and that will be public comments and presentations, items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Please step forward there and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I
Just
don't
a
think
second.
it's on.
Oh,
Nope.
my name is Leela Rosen and my home address is 36693 Chinolna Drive, Kenai. It does concern us Soldotna a lot. So, hi, my name is Leela Rosen. This is my husband, Scott. I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. We both grew up here and have also lived in this community for over 40 years. Scott has worked at the local refinery for 27 years now, and after graduating with my business degree from KPC in 2004, we have owned many businesses locally, including the Duck Inn, the Upper Deck, the Marydale Manor, the Kenai River Lodge, as well as other local rentals. Because this has been an amazing place to raise our family and now our grandchildren. The reason I'm here today is because we own 2 lots on Key Beach inside the Soldotna city limits that we want to develop by building a laser car and dog wash and more. When we went to get a water and sewer permit, we found that the permit alone to connect the water and sewer was $47,000 under code 13.16.040 and was put into place in 1986. You heard that right. $47,000 to become a customer that will pay for years into the future. And with a car wash, it will be at the highest metered rate. And beginning July 1st of this year, there will be additional increases every year for 5 more years. It seemed extremely high, so we did a little research and found that this is 100 times more than our sister cities throughout the state. Kenai, $479, Seward, $182. Anchorage is only $382 for this permit. In speaking with Seward's Director of Public Works, Doug Schessler indicated that the city does no actual work. The customer hires their own contractor for the actual hookups, so Seward only charges what it costs them to inspect the lines once installed. Does Soldotna provide more than this for 257 times the cost they are charging customers? To be honest, this would be like me charging $1,300 for a cheeseburger at the Duck Inn when Louis only charges $13. I call that inflation. We found ourselves asking, how is this business friendly? Soldotna has always been open for business and does what it can to promote thriving businesses by giving back to the local businesses in the way of improvement grants, etc., which makes it my favorite place to do business. But this feels like a terrible contradiction to that. To say my disappointment in this discovery from an antiquated code from 1986 is an understatement. This all seems like a triple, double, quadruple tax. The city will continue to benefit from this business for years to come through metered water and sewer usage every month of actual usage, additional local sales tax from car wash customers, in addition to added property tax from developing in Soldotna. As a longtime female business owner in Soldotna for over 2 decades, I would love the city of Soldotna to be my partner in business. And with that, I am asking for your help by requesting this council introduce an amendment to the code that puts Soldotna in line with Kenai by making
Go ahead.
metered water and sewer permit fees one flat fee and to align with other sister cities. We implore you to start this conversation and update it to entice other future investors to also build and put down roots here with a business-friendly environment for years to come. I have submitted a reference packet for everybody's information. I talked fast, so in case you guys have thoughts or questions, or I may have missed with my contact information if anyone wants to talk about it.
Any questions from the council? Thank you for your comments, and we will.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor Parker.
I just wanted to make a comment, and I do hope that the administration takes the time to look at this and look
Okay.
at what other cities in not only our area, but around the state are doing. And
Sure.
we have noticed that there are parts of our code that haven't been changed in a while, and
Yeah, 37 years, we were surprised. And the city officials we spoke with were all surprised to see that as well. I mean, there was a lot of shock. We reached out to a lot of people and It just seems like something, I know change is good for everyone, so maybe a change is in order.
Right.
So,
So hopefully the administration will take a look at this and bring back some
thank you.
suggested changes to council.
Yeah, I'm sure
Thanks.
the administration will be looking at this and getting back to you within a very short time. And,
I would love that either way. Thank
and
you.
Hopefully we'll have something to fix all this. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Anyone else in the chamber wishing to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll look at Zoom and I see no hands raised under Zoom. So we will move on to the next agenda item as soon as I can get through all this paperwork and find it. And the next one is Assembly and Legislative Reports. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? I see Representative Ruffridge on the line. So for those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing your raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your phone. Representative Ruffridge, would you like to make some comments?
No, thank you. I'm just on listening.
Go ahead,
I'll be
Representative
attending.
Ruffridge, you are on the line.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any comments tonight. I'll be attending in person here shortly and I'll give you my comments then. I'm just on
Can you
listening
hear
tonight.
us?
Thank
Because
you.
we are not hearing you.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Nor are we hearing Mr. Nelson, who just spoke.
And Mayor, if you can hear me, Mr. Rufford said he would be there in person soon. I can hear his audio.
That's them manipulating it, I bet.
We're not hearing you, Representative Ruffridge. I'm not. Try it one more time. Mr. Ruffridge, would you try it again one more time?
Hey, can you hear me? Hello?
If you're talking, we're still not hearing you on this end.
Especially.
Okay, try it again. Go ahead, Mr. Ruffridge. We're getting some voice back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just online listening today. I plan to be in person at your next city council meeting and give you a report from Juneau, but just on listening tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead. We're gonna move on. Okay, just for a test, Mr. Nelson, why don't you turn your audio on so we can see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Whitney?
We can. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And I guess we'll move on to the next agenda item here. Public hearings, testimony limited to 3 minutes per speaker. First item is ordinance 2023-018, amending Soldotna Municipal Code, section 13.16 and 13.20 to repeal reference to code which no longer exists, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
Motion to enact.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. May I have a second, please? Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. Report from the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in reviewing the special assessment district in preparation for what, when I got here, there was an ongoing special assessment project and I was reviewing the code to bring myself up to speed on it and discovered some references within our existing code that made references to code language that no longer existed. So spoke with Mr. Zarneski, Mr. Allen, and Mr. Cornelis, and was determined that, yeah, we need to update the code. So that is, we ran this through the legal department, and this is what we have for you now to make those amendments. They're basically technical in nature, but we wanted to clean it up.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chamber wishing to speak on ordinance 2023-018? Seeing none, I'll take a look at Zoom and I see no hands raised there. Having no one wishing to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll.
Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Wackler,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Ordinance 2023-018 passes on a 5-0 vote with 1 absent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 9, mayor and council reports. Mayor's report and comments. First one is King of the River, Kenai Peninsula Food Bank, Soldotna versus Kenai Food Drive. And June 29th and 30th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. drop off donations at the Kenai Peninsula Food Bank. And July 2nd, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. drop off donations at the Blasey Mall. And on July 4th at the Oilers Field, they will also have drop offs there, and they will determine who the winning city is. And I expect that Vice Mayor Parker will be throwing out the first pitch and maybe signing a contract with the Oilers to become a starting pitcher. I would love to be there, but I will be out of town and I would much prefer being here. Wish everyone a happy 4th of July, safe one, have fun. Hopefully the weather will be nice here. I'm going to be someplace where it's hot, muggy, and smoky. So have a good one. Next item is council reports on boards and commissions, Airport Commission meeting, June 15th, 2023. Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. Yes, the Airport Commission met and it was a routine meeting. There wasn't anything major that came up. And if there is something I'm missing, I would defer to Kyle.
Thank you for your report. Next item on the agenda is city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to flip to some notes from this morning's meeting with Lisa Murkowski's staff that Kyle alluded to earlier in the work session. This morning, we met with 5 members of Lisa Murkowski's staff, and Kyle and John both spoke on the projects. One, of course, being the field house. That's our first conversation that we had with the staff, and reported where we are. And as you discussed earlier in the work session on the funding mechanism, including reducing our capital outlay here at the city and really driving home the fact that we're committed to this project and it's going to continue moving forward. One of her team members asked about possible funding opportunities maybe on their side that they could look at are components of the project, possible energy efficiencies. They described it as being able to fund projects within a project, meaning looking at the other components of it to see if anything would fit in any funding opportunities that they may have. So we'll continue to look at the project within the project and continue working with them on possible other funding mechanisms for that project as well. Riverfront development project, same concept of first laying out the project, which they liked seeing. We're really excited about seeing. And then again, components of projects within the project, water, wastewater possible expansion, funding, roads and culverts and also, different access routes, that could be possible eligible for funding. And so we'll continue to work on that as well. Kyle spoke on the streets that you spoke about during the work session, Marydale being the collector and how much the use is of that and our need to really focus on that. They committed to looking at, like I said, other funding opportunities, thinking outside the box. And I do have to say, I was really impressed with that. While we were speaking, you could see their wheels turning about, oh, maybe this would fit here, maybe that would fit there. So they were really engaged. It was a really engaged meeting as well. Some other things that we spoke about are biosolids and also what they're dealing with PFAS remediation and funding opportunities with that. That may not have such an impact out with us, but it is something that they're dealing with nationwide and spoke about that as well. That's all I have.
Any questions for the city manager? There was one thing we had discussed at one time during the fires a few years back is the sports center, possibly now the field house, being used as an emergency shelter. And possibly, maybe we can bring that up to the senator's office and the representative's office also and see if that's something that would fit into some of their funding.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add
Go ahead.
too, we did speak about the CDS process, congressionally designated spending process and really how it's going. And there's still some lag time in the regulations for how they're putting out money, but it's being worked on, overall it's being worked out. And that of course would be in the agencies where they're working on how it will be rolled out and will receive funding. Not as easy as it used to be with the earmarks. They used to earmark and you just get the
Got the
money.
money.
That's not how it's working now. So that continues to be some lag time. And we're continuing to watch for when they will release funds and what we have to do to get it.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand. Or if you would like to comment, app users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, council comments. And we'll start with Mr. Nelson tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. No comments tonight.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Hutchings.
Well, I'm just happy it's not raining. It's kind of a blessing in disguise and there's no snow like the 4 feet that Bear Paw, Montana got yesterday. And I would just like to comment, I'm pleased to see we have a new police officer. And Chief, are we down any or have we met our limit now?
We have one to be starting July 5th, but I also have one that will be resigning at the end of the month.
So you're still looking.
We'll have room for one more.
Okay, thank you. And just everybody enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Ms. Wackler.
Just happy 4th of July, everybody. Should be a nice weekend.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I greatly appreciate July 4th and what it stands for in terms of being a country of law. And again, having a constitution, Bill of Rights and those things. And tonight I feel that we got another great example of what America's like compared to so much of the rest of the country. When I hear from the Rosens that they came in, they found an outrageous situation, an absolutely unacceptable charge, just outrageous. I mean, yes, they were able to come and speak with the staff members and they listened, no doubt. They came and listened to us. I have no doubt that we heard them and that we're going to respond to it. That is what the 4th of July is about, that we are a country under laws, that we believe that we are a fraternal organization of people trying to create the best country that we can, to take care of our community, our family, our friends, and again, to help the commercial interests that make us all better. And so I'm just, hope everyone enjoys July 4th. And I appreciate that we had such a living example tonight of what it's supposed to be about being an American. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. A couple of things. Last weekend, I drove to Anchorage and I noticed when I was driving back, from basically sunrise all the way till you get up past Russian River, crossing, it's a no pass zone. And it's for the safety of people in the area. And I had sent a note here a number of weeks ago recommending that from forestry up through till we get into Soldotna, that we make that a no pass area, like they've done in Cooper Landing to protect the community. Right now, just as you get up to the top of the hill past Mackey Lake, going to just past Whistle Hill, that's a passing zone. And that's not safe. It's not safe for our visitors. It's not safe for our community. And I know DOT likes to do studies and we need to do the analysis. They're going to be redoing that highway in a couple of years. Why can't we make that a no passing zone right now? So I thought it was very good on the fact that Cooper Landing was able to get that in place to reduce the number of accidents going through there, because, you know, we are dependent on those highways for the visitors that come to our community. Moving on, today I spent from noon to 3 at the Wednesday market. The food bank had a booth there talking about the food drive and the campaign. Who's going to be king of the river? Will it be Soldotna or will it be Kenai? And had great conversations with the folks that stopped by and visited. And I, of course, was out talking with folks because I like visiting. And so it was a good turnout and we got good response. Raised a little bit of money for Kenai, but mostly for Soldotna. If you haven't donated to the city of Soldotna and the food bank campaign, please make sure you do so before the 4th of July. And you can either do that through donating canned food at the locations that the mayor identified, bring it to the ballpark, 4th of July, over at Coral Seymour Field, or you can donate money online, and every dollar is the equivalent of a pound. So I encourage every single council member, I donated today, I encourage every single council member to please make a donation to this food bank campaign. And I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, and there are lots of visitors in town, so I welcome them all and everybody be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. And on the food donations, make sure it's heavy food, a pound or more, or just cash. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Executive session, we have no need for one this evening. And next one is item 14, meeting announcements. July 5th, 2023, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 5:30 p.m. The July 6th Park and Recreation Advisory Board meeting has been canceled. And the July 12th, 2023 City Council meeting here in Chambers at 6 p.m. And with nothing further on the agenda, we are adjourned.
I'm still struggling with her